Level 3. Here we go. The Ancient City. Which immediately made me want to go to... back to the manual again. God. Can I say I miss the days when there were really elaborate manuals that had a lot of just fun writing in it? And here's part of why. Ancient warriors! Allied with the campaigner, these evil natives are painted up to look like walking dead. Extremely accurate with blowguns, they fall easy prey to a 12-gauge round. Now, we're not going to see them yet, but those are the new... Basically, they're just reskinned poachers, essentially. Instead of guns, they have blowguns. And instead of halberds, they have bow staffs with blades on both ends. Which is not a good idea, by the way. Considering the way that one uses a bow staff. Hi, Faye. What was I going to talk about? What was I talking about in 2? Right. The Raptors. The comic book that I read had one of them, that metal thing on their head. Have I already shown? Yes, okay. If I fall on that blue stuff, it'll just teleport me back to the beginning. Thank goodness. But that metal thing on their head is, I guess, contains their consciousness. It's sort of like a cybernetic brain. But the comic book that I had read was where one of the raptor's head things was put onto a cloned human body, and he was taunting Turok, "Haha, I am a pink worm now!" And I didn't see the ending of that. All I remember is that evidently the sound, the onomatopoeia for a minigun firing is brack, brack. I love comic book sound effects. By the way, I'm not... that is... I cannot think of any better spelling of the... spelling for the onomatopoeia of a minigun spooling up. Or firing, rather. Because, oh man. It reminds me of a similar situation with Godzilla. I mean, how do you write the onomatopoeia for Godzilla's roar? So the closest approximation they came up with, and again, I'm not envious of the task, and I cannot come up with anything better, so I will not criticize it, but they came up with a scree onk, which I always found kind of weird, but it's, again, I can't think of any other way to write that. But the Raptors have that thing on their head. Because it was in the comic books. The entry for the Raptors, by the way, does not say they are velociraptors like Jurassic Park did. It does say, however, that they are vile, evil creatures bioengineered for extra ferocity. As you progress into the game, who knows what other bizarre shapes they might take on. Spoiler alert, they get guns strapped to them. Or more specifically, they get a laser cannon strapped to them. So, I'm sure Dr. Evil's really happy about that. In any case, what struck me was the bio-engineered part of their little bio. I take it that they subcontracted out to Umbrella in order to get their raptors developed for poachers. If I haven't established it yet, the normal human enemies are called poachers. But I beg the question, if they're in the Lost World, what are they poaching? Is Turok from the Lost World? It's not clear. If he is, why is he dressed, and I would assume it has the mannerisms of a stereotypical Native American Plains Native American amalgamation. I've got no idea. Oh, and I say that because if you're not aware that the stereotyped, it happens a lot in older Western movies, but the stereotype Indian, not from India, Native American, that you typically see in those old Westerns is not really based on any one particular tribe. It's more of an amalgamation of different plains tribes. They basically mix and match different aspects of different tribes, because if you actually bother to look up how many different tribes there are in the United States, there are it's more than you think. I think the number that comes to the top of my head, but is not accurate, I'll have to Google it some other time, is somewhere above 100 different tribes, unique tribes, just in the United States alone. Not including Canadian ones and some South American ones. Right. It's an amalgamation. It's not any one tribe. So you cannot just say, oh, he's Cheyenne, and then, oh yeah, they put the feathers in their hair. Well, what kind? I don't know, all of them. Well, no, you see, this other tribe... Shut up, I don't care! Print it! Make it! It is what it is. Consequently, finally, need to get around to actually talking about some of the systems in the game, because mechanics, it's a shooter, what do you want? But the health system, which becomes way more noteworthy on harder difficulties. I also didn't bother to establish. Well, obviously I established we're playing on hard, but there is another difficulty beyond hard, and it is hardcore. Why am I not playing on that? I'll tell you a very good reason why I'm not playing on that. I would never fight anything. And I want to give some modicum of entertaining gameplay to watch. And why would I never fight anything? It's the same thing as hard, but enemies get sped up. Or at least it seems that way. To my eyes. So they operate with lightning speed. That's it. And like I said, I would never fight anything, not because I can't hit them, but because something funny actually happens because they're so quick. They'll tend to get kind of stuck in loops of running around in circles, which is kind of funny to watch, but it gets old pretty quick. And it also doesn't transition into, like I said, engaging to watch shooting, because I'll just run past it. Heck, half the time I run past everything anyway. Did you see my AVP up here? There was an entire level where I only fought 2 enemies. I recently replayed it again to show off some of the cheat options, and you can literally ignore everything in that level. Much like in this game. It's something I alluded to, and I know I said I'd kind of save this as kind of an introspective thing at the end, but it really has been ragging on me that replaying these older shooters, and even newer ones, so much of them is predicated upon... By the way, this is not a secret area, even though you have to do a diagonal jump to reach it. I'll explain that later, but so many of these games are predicated upon and trivialized by movement. To the point where I thought about re-recording the entire LP again, I thought about you see that Perlin falling back out. Grabbing keys produces a lot of awkward and hilarious. I don't know how to do funny moments, humorous moments. But how many of these the shooters of old and new, are predicated entirely on movement, to the point where you would be forgiven for begging the question, why even have the gun at all? Why even have combat at all? And the logical answer to that was actually a game I happen to really like called Mirror's Edge, where you can get a gun and it is first person and there are enemies that shoot at you. The goal is not to kill them, the goal is to run. Just run through the level. And I actually thought about that because I went back to re-record and I thought, okay, maybe I could get this game out faster. I could do the LP even faster than before, which again brought up that speedrun discussion where I thought, nah, I'd rather be there things to see and look at. I have no problem with speedruns. For me, I watch speedruns less for seeing the game itself than I do for just, like, seeing glitches or seeing things that are unintended. That's what I enjoy seeing in speedruns, little tricks like that. But, on that note, I thought I could get this game done at a faster time, because I think the ultimate time I hit for the full LP is around 3 hours or so, 3.5 hours. And a lot of that time is occupied by me exploring the levels and killing enemies. So when I went to do a re-recording, I just ran through, I think it was this level actually. I thought I could get this level done a lot faster, and sure enough I could. And I even had enough ammo to fight the boss at the end, spoiler alert. And yet, I literally, the moment I stopped, because I started going into level 4, doing the same thing, and I stopped and I audibly sighed. And then my brain kind of had a moment of catching, wait, did you just sigh? Are you bored? And that was when I thought about it, and I said, yes, I am kind of bored, just running through it like this. And in a way, I had just become completely bored with the shooter as a genre because of that. Because don't take away the enemy. Keep the enemies there, but take away the player's ability to fight, and nothing fundamentally changes about how you progress. And I thought about that in relation to other shooters, like more modern shooters. Take Call of Duty, for example. Call of Duty is kind of infamous for not really being about fighting, and more about hitting certain trigger points. An infamous example of this was, I remember even me myself, I was looking at ways to beat the final mission of Call of Duty 4, when you're on the airplane to rescue the president. You have to beat that mission on the hardest difficulty. The timer is extremely strict. And I was looking up a guide for how to do that in my youth, and I remember the guide even talking about none of the fighting matters. Your AI guys will take care of the other enemies. Now I know it's not relevant to Turok, but it stands to point that all that mattered was your actual physical distance in the level, the speed at which you made the most forward movement. And that has stuck with me, playing through the modern Doom, thinking about shooters that are coming out, and why I am just completely uninterested in any of them. Doom Eternal, by the way, looks fantastic. This will finally be the moment to demonstrate. Look at that. A normal arrow took out a Perlin in one shot after one tech arrow, whereas the other one took 5 tech arrows. On normal difficulty, they take 3. Hard difficulty, they take 5. The regular bow, the normal arrows, I think has a critical hit. The manual doesn't say anything about this. All it says about this is it says you'll do more damage if you fully charge it. A sophisticated bow with added strength. This is the first step in distance fighting. Well, actually, some would argue the first step in distance fighting was throwing knives, and if you really want to go back, that's another topic. Standard arrows, low tech but lethal. Holding down the trigger longer will cause Turok to draw back the bow and hold. Releasing the trigger after Turok has drawn the arrow back completely will result in greater distance and damage. So yes, that makes sense. But the thing that it doesn't say, if you watch very carefully in that footage, and there was actually a better example of it in a later level that where I used the regular arrows again. If you watch very carefully, the arrowhead, as Turok draws it back and it reaches its full tension, if you wait long enough, the arrowhead will glint, and if you release it right as the glint appears, I guess it's a critical hit, and it just does an absurd amount of damage. To the point where it can kill a Perlin in 2 shots, as opposed to the explosive tech arrows, which have to do 5. And they have to do 5, or more in some cases, regardless of how much you charge up the bow. I actually tested that extensively. The tech arrows do not have a charge-up mechanic. They have a fixed damage rate, although even that is a bit suspect, because I get the impression, going back through footage and then playing a little bit more of it on my own time, that certain enemies actually have weaknesses to certain weapons. Again, not confirming. I have no confirmation of that. My testing is not scientific enough. You'd have to get multiple people doing it. But it seems to be the case. But oh boy, this section. I was prepared. It didn't happen. But I was prepared that if I fell off of these, it's a bottomless pit and you'll instantly die. If I fell off of these, I was just gonna load up that save. To hell with the whole showing off dying thing. Because I hate when something... You have this health system, you have an armor system, you know, enemies deal damage, and I'm already playing on hard difficulty. Imagine playing on hardcore. It's the Mega Man dilemma again, where do you have a fall in a pit, kill the player, cue the Snake Eater soundboard, by the by. Do you have it kill them or just deal damage and they spawn back at the top? And for me, I'm not too much about that. Back to the health system. I never bothered to explain that in full. Point is, you have a fixed amount of health at 100. It can be extended. There's your perfect example. There's your bonus also. And I'm going to shut up for a minute because we're going to have a boss fight, which is stupid. Because in another why moment, going back to the theme, my guess for how the designer wanted to, or he thought about this boss's behavior, essentially asked one question. And the question he or she asked is, I wonder what it felt like to be the cyber demon in Doom, watching an enemy circle around you, circle strafe around you. I wonder what that felt like for the cyber demon. So I'm going to design a boss that replicates that experience to the player. And thus, he envisioned the Long Hunter. But it doesn't start with the Long Hunter. No, it starts with his Jeep pals. The way you fight them is to do this and have them circle around you. Isn't that interesting? It's certainly one way to design a boss. Another interesting thing, using standard ammunition, if you use anything other than explosive shotgun shells or tech arrows, you will deal an inconsequential amount of damage. It will take so long, and this might be just because I'm playing on hard difficulty, but if anything, that just exposes the problem even more. That's actually a common theme I've noticed among a lot of games, that if you put them on the highest difficulty, you start to notice a lot of quibbles in game design a lot more readily than you would playing on standard difficulties, defaults. But you will deal inconsequential amounts of damage. And here I was actually trying to exploit that, like I said, the arrow critical hit thing again. Before eventually I just said, oh, forget it, I'll just use explosives. I'm not ashamed to say that, yes, this is a bad performance against Long Hunter. However, I don't really like the fight to begin with because it's just a bullet sponge. He just beelines it towards you and fires his pulse rifle. That's the fight. Amazing. Heck, the Jeeps had more relevant strategy to them than this guy does. Circle strafe around him. Oh my god, it's the same thing again. How many shooters is it just circle strafe around the guy? It's like playing the first bosses of... It's like, well, heck, never mind. It's like fighting the bosses of Dark Souls without any of the interesting surrounding... Without any of the interesting surrounding it. Sure, leave it at that. Even they were aware that the bosses have an absurd amount of life because they infinitely spawn explosive shells and tech arrows for you in the boss fight itself. They knew. That's it for Long Hunter. We get an awkward shot. To which Turok has his little victory pose. And we acquire the pulse rifle. Now, if you'll excuse me, we're going to take advantage of the infinitely respawning explosive implements that we had to waste killing the boss. Again, I jumped around. But why can you not switch between regular arrows and tech arrows to kill Perlins easier? I don't know. I don't know. And with that, that's going to be the end of the Ancient City. One cool thing about this game is I kind of compared the level progression to something like Demon's Souls. You'll almost always have access to two new levels at any given time. And that's a really, really good way of going about it. And every other level, you get a boss fight. It's good structure. I like it. It's a good thing. Don't want to go through one level? You got options. You can go to a different one. But up next, it's going to be the ruins, as opposed to the other ruins.